In this lesson, I'd like to revisit a previous practicum project of the dog breed info project and show you how we can add in multiple forms. Under the view menu, we had the 7 different groups: herding, hound, non-sporting, sporting, terrier, toy, and working group. Filter the dogs by those groups, but I also wanted to add something about the AKC groups and what those are. So I added a menu item of about the AKC groups, which pops up a dialog, which is really just a second form that overlays our application. This is what we call a modal dialog. We can't go back to the application or the original form until we've interacted with this form and closed it. So it's always going to stay on top. I can move it, but it is always the top and active form until I close it. Once I close it, now I'm back to my primary form 1, and I can interact with it. So again, about the AKC group, it's a second form that we've added to the project. I'm going to show you how to do that. We design it the same way. In this case, I didn't code anything. The only thing that works here is the default exit box to close the form. But we could add things like radio buttons and combo boxes and make this a custom dialog, or make it a form in which we interact with items in the form itself. In this case, it's just informational. Well, let's take a look at how this is done. To create additional groups in a project, all we do is go to the project solution, right-click, choose Add, New Item, and in the dialog box, we're going to choose Windows Forms on the left-hand side and Forms Windows Form, and give it a name. It's going to be a .vb, and I'm going to name this one Groups. Groups.vb, and click Add. And I now have a Groups.vb form in my solution, and in the editor, I see my new form called Groups. I'm going to make some changes to this. I'm going to set the size to be 760, 610, a little smaller than my form 1. I'm going to give it a text of AKC Groups Overview. And I'm going to design out my form. Let me pause here and come back. I added an image list that contains my 7 images representing the different groups. These are all JPEGs at 120 by 120. And then added some labels. I'm going to click on my form. Let's go to the back color. And I'm going to choose wheat. I'm not coding anything on this form. There's no buttons or list boxes to interact with. I have removed the maximize box and the minimize box, and that leaves the close box here that they can click on to close this form. Now, one other thing I did on the form that's really important, I want this to pop up at a particular place on the screen. Startup position, I set to manual. I believe the default is Windows default location. But by setting it to manual, I can specify the top and left coordinates of where I want this to appear on the screen. I'm going to go back over to my Form 1. And I want to add a menu item to pop up this information window. I'm going to go to the View menu. I'm going to right-click on the All Breeds and choose Insert Menu Item. I'll get a menu item at the top. Tool Strip Menu Item. I'm going to change the text of that to be about the AKC groups, and I'm going to add 3 periods. Now those 3 periods we call ellipses. That is an industry standard saying if you choose this menu item, or if you have a button that has 3 periods on it, if you click that button, it's going to bring up a dialog box. Just an industry standard, a little visual cue of what's going to happen in choosing that information. Now I'm also going to give this a name. So let's come up here to the name, and I'll name this one MNU About Groups. I'm going to do one more thing. Right click on that All Breeds again. I want to insert another menu item. And what I'm going to do in this one is set the text equal to a single hyphen. And what that creates, when I run the application under the View menu, I now get a line between the different sections of this menu. So that just a single hyphen as the menu text will create the separate, what's called a separator bar or a separator line between the groups in the menu. Now at this point, if I choose About AKC Groups, it doesn't do anything. We need to code that. I'm going to double click on the About AKC Groups menu item, and let's enter some code. Here's my code. I'm going to dim FRM groups, so FRM for form groups as new groups. That's my form. FRM groups.top equals me.top. So me is the form 1. I'm going to get the top value where that's located on the screen and add 65 to it. And do the same thing to the left. That's going to place this form, this groups form, a little bit down from the top of the form and a little bit to the left. And then I'm going to call frmgroups.showDialog. This creates what we call a modal dialog. A dialog that will always be on top. We can't interact with the form below it. So it always maintains the focus. Let me run this. Go to the View menu. Choose About AKC Groups. There's my modal groups form popping up. And I can move it around, but I can't get back to the form 1 because it is modal. That's the show dialog. But I can close it and go back to my original form. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.